So I think we're ready to start. On peut m'indiquer c'est bon? Manu, c'est bon pour démarrer? Okay, so thank you very much. I guess there's fewer of us here in the room this morning. Perhaps some people will join us as Claudia makes her presentation today. As you know, there was a key theme for both days of this conference on questions of health inequalities. But what we like to do in the Health, Wellness and Society Network is also to show how these perspectives relate to the country, the host university. So I'm delighted to be able to welcome Claudia Senik, who is a professor here at Sorbonne University, but she also holds a chair at the Paris School of Economics. She's considered a real expert in the field of her expertise, which is subjective well-being, and particularly exploring subjective well-being in the workplace. And as you know, we've seen dramatic changes in our workplace, with telework becoming very important since the beginning of the pandemic. So she also published many volumes, and I will ask her to come up and perhaps also talk a little bit more about her work before beginning this presentation today. And particularly, it would be interesting if you could also perhaps outline the work that you've been doing as an advisor to the French government. I think colleagues would be really interested to hear about that. So I'm going to leave the floor to you and let you explain more.
I can take this up, right? Okay. Hi, so thank you for being here and inviting me. Very glad to be at university, although I don't know these premises. So I'm a professor here and also at the Paris School of Economics. I've been working on the economics of happiness for about 20 years. And so I'm the director of this well-being observatory at CEPREMAP, where we study the foundations and evolution of subjective well-being, happiness, life satisfaction, optimism or pessimism in France, particularly. And I'm also acting as a member of this Conseil d'analyse économique, so this Council of Economic Analysis advisory to the Prime Minister of the French government. That's it. I've been interested in the economic foundations of happiness. So, you know, income, GDP growth, income distribution, income gaps, comparisons, but also different gender gaps and many other things over these long years during which I've worked. And so maybe today I want to talk with you about subjective well-being and telework. And this is because obviously telework is here to stay to some extent, and it's going to change completely the way we, well, the drivers of general well-being and life satisfaction. And so first I'll talk generally about the drivers of well-being at work, because this is about the transformation of work and what we can expect due to the transformation of work and the extension of telework. How are these drivers turned on and off by working from home, and how this impacts the general life satisfaction, which is what we care about, happiness in general, not only job satisfaction, but life satisfaction. And so I'll give you some insight from the COVID experience, the lockdown experience, and a small study that we ran with a student. Okay, so first of all, when I said telework is here to stay, actually, this is just a guess. So during the lockdown, about 1/3 of jobs were working from home. Some studies estimate that about 3/4 of management jobs could be done from home. So this is this lockdown and COVID lockdown came as an acceleration of a process that was already going on with this so-called digital transformation of the economy. And the reason why this acceleration is not going to be completely erased and we would go back to the statu quo ante is because things have been done. People have invested in the technologies, in the equipment, people, I mean workers and firms that enable to work from home. There was this stigma, working from home was considered by managers as, maybe not working so much. And when workers were asking for the right to work from home, at least part-time, management would be really reluctant, like we don't really know what they're going to do, especially if it's on Friday or Wednesday, the kids' day. So, but we've learned that it's possible to work from home and that people work maybe sometimes even longer hours when they work from home than when they're on the firm. So the big question that is debated now is whether people workers want to return to the firm. And we read a lot of papers showing that they don't. Some of them don't. I mean, I do, but I'll explain why after. But many people don't. And some firms have already announced that they would know that people could work from everywhere, and they would even close or downsize their offices. So, but on the side of workers, whether they want to return or not depends on how it impacts their subjective well-being. So this is why it's interesting to know what the answer is. Okay, so for this audience, I don't think I need to remind this, but well-being at work, for an economist, for the basic first year of economics, well-being at work, is no issue because work is a source of disutility. We work for money. We sell our time against money, and then with this money we can consume, and this is nice and a source of well-being. But so in principle, work is not a source of well-being. But of course, we know that it's not true, and that work gives us our status in society, a role, a reason to get up in the morning, social rhythm, self-esteem, good health. We know that people who lose their job never recover completely until they find a new job. They remain less happy during the entire duration of unemployment spell. Okay, so it's legitimate to be interested in well-being at work as a source of general encompassing well-being. Also, on the supply side, on the side of firms, well-being at work is also interesting because it's probably a source of productivity. This is difficult to show empirically. There's a lot of papers and studies showing that there is an association between workers' well-being and motivation on the one side and firms' productivity on the other side. To show causality, that causality is really running from workers feel well, like the firm, and so they are more productive. It's more difficult because you need experimental design, but some experiments have been run to showing that indeed when workers are in a good mood, they are more collaborative. They have more imagination. They solve additions and calculations of several digit numbers faster and with less errors. So some lab experiments or field experiments show that probably there is causality running from well-being at work to productivity. So it's interesting for firms, not only for workers. Okay, so again, here, I guess this question is not really a mystery. How to measure objective well-being or well-being at work? So I'm using this WB, well-being at work. Of course, one possibility is to look at objective indicators like the turnover of workers, illness, absenteeism, or quits. The other thing in which we are interested here today is self-reported subjective well-being. So for well-being at work, in the same way as for life satisfaction in general, the state of the art, let's call it this way, is that there are four main drivers of well-being, or first four main measures of well-being. The first one is satisfaction. So life satisfaction or job satisfaction. So satisfaction is a cognitive concept. It's, I expect some things, I endeavor some action, and then I get the feedback and I'm satisfied. So I get enough satis or not. So I judge. It's cognitive. I judge. Am I satisfied with my life? Is it what I expected? Then there are more hedonic measurement, like emotions. So how often over the last week or last day did you feel positive emotions like happy, relaxed, joy, etc., or negative emotions, stressed, anxious, irritated, etc. So there are two emotional type of measurement, and then the fourth one is meaningfulness. So just you feel like what you do in your life is important, valuable, has meaning. And in the same way, meaningfulness of job is really crucial. You feel that your job has meaning for you, for the firm, for society. Is it transforming the world? Am I doing something important? Okay, so to measure these 4 dimensions, which then can be decomposed into a lot of sub-dimensions, there are a lot of questionnaires that firms are using and researchers too, like the Karasek, the Gallup Q12 engagement survey, etc. And so researchers have used this data and ran nationally representative surveys of workers and firms. And so what have we learned and what can we expect about telework and well-being? So diving into well-being at work now, we can distinguish 4 main, again, factors of well-being at work. The first one is autonomy. So autonomy relates to the sense of control, decisional latitude, so the fact of being able to organize oneself as one sees fit. So this depends on, for instance, the size of the firm. You're more autonomous in a small firm. It depends on the length of the management chain. It depends on the management style. And so usually, empirically, we see that more autonomy is related with higher well-being at work. The second big type of driver is social capital, social relations between colleagues, trust, sense of inclusion. So inclusion is, for instance, when there is organizational change, are people consulted before the decision is taken? Are they already aware of what's going on before they arrive in the meeting and learn that this is going to happen? This is the worst. A large meeting, everybody's there, and then some manager announces that, okay, there's going to be that and that change, and this is going to impact you this way and that way, and nobody has been consulted. So this is really the worst case. So I contrary inclusion. And inclusion also, of course, means inclusion of everybody, so diversity, etc. The third big type of drivers of well-being at work is the prospect for progression. So this is career prospect. So progression of in terms of responsibility, in terms of status, in terms of salary, of course. This is almost anthropologic. Many studies have shown that people have a quasi innate preference for increasing time profiles. So if you're going to receive a certain amount of money, of wage over your life cycle, you could either have it, everything in T0, and then you spend it as you wish, or the same amount every month or every year, or an increasing wage profile over your career. People really prefer the last version. It's nice to expect that things are going to improve. And this has been shown empirically with really a very clean causality setting. And this is why actually very often the career of people is this way, and the traditional large firm where you enter when you're young and you're kind of underpaid compared to your productivity, compared to your contribution to the firm, and then your wage increases over the lifespan, and then in the end you're a little bit overpaid. But you know this from the start, and this is the contract. It's like an intertemporal contract. So why is this? It's because workers have a preference for this type of profile. And of course, on the side of firms, it's a way to retain workers because turnover is costly. Okay, so much for progression. And then the meaningfulness of work, of course, it's important. So this is David Graeber wrote a book called Bullshit Jobs about this job that you can't really figure out what they're really for, and people really feel that they're losing their time. They're just selling their time just for money, but they don't learn anything. They don't they're not useful to themselves, to their country, or to the world. So meaningfulness is the fact that the job is meaningful is very important. So it has a 3 dimensions, as I said. Meaningful for me, so I'm growing from my job. Meaningful for the firm, maybe the process of the firm is nice, I like it, it's conform with my values, and then I'm doing something useful for the world. And it's also very important that these sources of meaning are consistent. For instance, if what you do for the firm is nice, and the people are the management is well, and you like the process, but what you're doing is really not good, you're selling things that you disapprove of, it's a problem. Okay, of course, on the contrary, there are factors of psychosocial stress, like working in difficult conditions with noise, dust, heavy things to lift. Also, psychologically difficult conditions like pressure. I learned by looking at these questionnaires that having relations with clients, with customers, so direct relations, interpersonal, is a source of psychological stress. I thought that it was nice, seeing people rather than not. But no, actually, it's a source of stress because customers can be very demanding, impatient, and aggressive. Okay, and the last thing is wage distribution. We learn from this literature that people don't only care about what they earn, but they also care about what other people earn, especially in the firm. Wage distribution, so the wage gaps between people matters a lot. And so this is related with the transparency of the wage schedule within firms. Okay, so just to tell you, it's not just superficial. Using international or European surveys like the one I'm referring to here, the European Working Conditions Survey, which surveys 40,000 people in of this feeling is above the median in the firm. This has the same impact on his job satisfaction as an increase of his wage by twofold. So doubling the wage of that person. So it's the same, yeah. This gives you an order of magnitude of the phenomenon. And conversely, health risk has the same impact on the reduction of job satisfaction as a division of the wage by 2. And when you look at the drivers of life satisfaction, work-life balance is the most important thing. This is the most influential factor. So this is just to show that you can quantify the importance of these drivers and show that because it's more intuitive, you can give a wage equivalent, a monetary equivalence of these drivers. Okay, so knowing this now, what is the potential impact of telework on job satisfaction? So thinking about autonomy, so essentially the answer is not really clear-cut. It's not. It's really ambiguous. So let's look at each of these drivers and think about it. So autonomy, a priori, working from home is nice because you can organize as you wish. Nobody's looking at what you're doing, and you can also decide to work at different moments of the day and combine your private life with your professional life better. So this would be favorable. It would have a positive impact on well-being at work. But conversely, depending on what job you have, you can be subject to heavier electronic control, like if your firm controls what you're doing on your computer and can count how much time you spend doing these different tasks. Or if you have a very precise algorithm of what you should do, when you first, if you're in a call center, if you work in I don't know, as an IT in India, and you know that you should, this action requires that action, etc., like a tree of the entire process, then the digitalization of your job allows you to work from home, but restricts completely the autonomy that you can have. So this would be negative. Work-life balance, as I said, we could expect that working from home is good for work-life balance because you can, pick up your kids at 4:30 at school. spend time with them, etc., but then get back to work in the evening. And so it's a better combination, articulation of private time and work time. But conversely, it could go the other way. So there could be a blurring of the frontiers could become blurred between private life and professional life. Like you are supposed to spend time with your family, but you have something to finish, and you can't escape that. Or conversely, you're supposed to work, but your children are around, and you're doing this Zoom, but you're not concentrated. So this could create tension in the family, and be negative. Social capital, I'm calling this social capital. I guess this is clear for everybody. It means the amount of social relationships that are built and accumulated over time, and then they have like a yield, a return on and the return of all these interpersonal relations is well-being. So interpersonal relations, actually, I don't know why I put it in green, and so what is green is supposed to be nice, good for well-being, and red is supposed to be bad, but I think here I inverted. So a priori, working from home is not going to improve the interpersonal relation. Of course, if you spend a lot of years in the firm and you just spend 1 year working from home, then of course the relations, the people you already know, it's just a continuation. But to start new collaborations, to start working with people who are just recently recruited, to create this network of cooperation and solidarity. A priori, telework is not a good thing. But on the contrary, if relationships are tense and conflictual and toxic for well-being, it could be nice to step back and work from home. So. But a priori, for social capital, I would say that it's not this driver would be turned off. And for career, I don't see how telework would be good. If you're not in the office, you don't really understand the dynamics of the projects. You don't have this, and conversely, the managers could not really understand what the worker is doing and not evaluate correctly his contribution. Or maybe working from home and digitalizing everything could reduce some processes of inequality or discrimination, maybe. So concretely, go back. So gender gap. So a priori, everybody expected that telework is going to be good for women in terms of reducing the gender gap, because everybody is now locked down at home. So men who traditionally spend less time on housework and childcare are going to be there, and so they are going to have to do more. So studies before the COVID and even during the COVID shown that this is true, but it doesn't mean that the gap is being reduced. On the contrary, the gap is the same. So women do more and men do more, but the difference remains the same. We've known from we learned from during the COVID, the lockdown experience, that this burden of taking care of the house and the kids has weighted predominantly on women. So not good for the gender gap. The other driver is meaningfulness. So here, meaning, of course, is the purpose of work. So for the purpose of work, working from home, it's not clear how it could work. But I think that another channel here is through identity. So, you know, I like this Goffman framework. You know, it's this sociologist who wrote about this. He proposed this theory of interactionism. So social interactions are like a theater scene, and so everybody's playing a character at the occasion of each interaction. So here I'm a, I don't know, professor or a researcher rather. Then over lunch I'll be a, I don't know, a friend. In the evening I'll act as the mother, etc. So every person endorses different roles along the day, depending on the interaction that she's involved in. And this is giving sense of identity. So of course we have multiple identities, but during one interaction, we endorse one identity, and this is motivating, and this is giving sense and purpose and meaningfulness. For this to happen, probably it's useful to be there in the same room physically. There is some kinesthetic phenomenon of that matters for interpersonal relation and the sense of identity. I don't know if so. Probably working from home would attenuate the sense of identity, and it would also, so in the same time, it would reduce the commitment device. So, you know, going, this is why I return to my office. I can work from home, but I go every day, Boulevard Jourdan, to work, because when I'm there, first of all, in the middle of nowhere in Porte d'Orléans, horrible. And then there's nothing to do. You know, there's no fridge, there's no washing machine, there's no kids, nobody's talking to me about anything other than work. So I am here, like, you know, Ulysses, you know, in his boat. I'm committed to work, and I just took off all the other opportunities. So when I'm in the premises of my workplace, I endorse the workplace identity, and I'm also committed. So I don't know, working from home, I guess after some time you lose this sense of identity and commitment. Just to give you an illustration, I have a colleague last year during the lockdown. She told me, even when I'm talking with people on Zoom, I'm wearing my high heels shoes. And she gets dressed, you know, not only the top, but also the skirt and the shoes, because then she feels she's working. Well, I mean, I'm not working, I'm not wearing this kind of shoes now, but I still feel committed. Okay, and then finally, the basic needs. I'm rushing a little bit. I like that there is I attended the talk by an anthropologist called Pascal Diby. He wrote a book recently called Anthropologie du bureau. So anthropology of the office, but it's the office as the, you know, the desk and the room and also the firm. And one small thing among the very large historical perspective, one small detail that struck me is that for many people, office is like a 4-star hotel. It's, you know, it's nice, it's clean, it's a kind of luxury for some people. I mean, maybe compared to their own house. So working from home is, you know, losing this comfort. Okay, so sorry. Empirical evidence. I already said a lot actually when about this. So the empirical evidence is that first of all, before COVID, there was a lot of work on working from home and the impact on productivity. I'm not talking about that, and on well-being. The results are all over the place. It's completely inconclusive because there is self-selection of people into telework. So sometimes it's good for well-being at work, sometimes not. It depends on the dimensions. It's really very difficult to conclude. There are some papers which run experiments or use the opportunity of natural experiments. I'm not going to talk about them, but just maybe one very, very simple paper, a choice experiment. Just people who workers were applying to work in call centers, and so the firm with researchers set up an experiment where they propose different types of contracts. So, you know, the traditional working in the firm from 9 to 5, etc., and then some more atypical contracts. And one of these contracts was allowed people to work from home. And each of these organization of the time was associated with a different wage. And the analysis of the choice of people, this is just a choice, it's just a verbal choice, was that people would choose the type of contract which allowed them to stay at home, to work from home, even when the wage was 8% lower. So it's like people were willing to pay, to give up 8% of their wage to be able to work from home. So I think it shows that people want to do that. Now, during COVID, of course, many surveys show that subjective well-being was down, of course. So people were stressed. The hospital anxiety depression index was soared. People were working more hours, as I said, rather than less, for the same results. So productivity went down. The gender gap was unchanged. So it was rather a negative experience from the point of view of job satisfaction. But now we've looked with a student of mine at the UK Household Longitudinal Survey, UK HLS, and we were able to identify the very specific impact of telework on life satisfaction. So disentangling the impact of COVID, so all the stress that goes with the epidemic, and the fact of working from home or not. So it's really what we call a natural experiment, like something that happens, nobody expected, and it's huge and you don't have the choice. So this is just showing in the UK, the percentage of people who suddenly switched from working in the firm to working from home. So here you see 3% of people were working from home, and then suddenly 60% of them switch to working from home. It depends on the type of job. Some jobs are teleworkable. I don't know if I can use this word, and some jobs are not. So for people who could do their job at home, they just had to do it. It was compulsory. It was very stringent regulation. So we use this survey. Usually it's a yearly survey that runs since 1991. It used to be called BHPS, now it's UK HLS. So it's every year the same people until they get out of the survey, of course, but it's a panel, so the same people every year. And then there is a special COVID module where people are interviewed every month or every other month. And so we look at what happens to people during the episodes of very strict lockdown. And so we look at the impact of, so we concentrate on people who have a teleworkable job. So, and for these people, we see them many, many times. Before COVID, they work in the firm. And after COVID, sometimes they telework. So for anybody who has a teleworkable job, meaning that at some point she was teleworking, we look at the difference in life satisfaction, depending on whether on that specific month, on that particular month, she was working from home or working in the firm. So we focus on people who are potentially teleworking, and we look at their life satisfaction or well-being, subjective well-being, depending on whether they are at that moment working from home or working in the firm. And so you see, so I'm not going to show you the equation, but we neutralize the impact of COVID because COVID is for everybody. We focus on these people because, of course, we cannot compare the well-being at work of well-being of somebody who has this type of job rather than that type, because it's not the same people. It's a heterogeneity. And we look at two impact measures, life satisfaction. So generally it's measured at just asking people, how satisfied are you currently with your life overall? Completely dissatisfied and completely satisfied from 1 to 7. And then this general health questionnaire, which is really standard, the GHQ-12, asking people how often they experience different types of feelings, like being concentrated, loss of sleep, being able of making decisions, feeling unhappy, depressed, confident, etc. These are the measures that are included in the survey from the start until now. And so this is what we see. So the legends are technical, but okay. So this is life satisfaction of people. The red line is people who do not have a teleworkable job. The blue line is people who have a teleworkable job. It means that at some point we will see them teleworking. Already before the start of the epidemic, this is 2016, people who have a teleworkable job, so service or management job, they're already more satisfied. They're already happier than people who don't. It's not the same people. Maybe these people are more educated. Maybe they're more in the modern sector. So there is this gap. And over time, there is a fall in life satisfaction, a downward trend of life satisfaction of everybody. This is okay. This is just what's happening in the UK. But the important thing is that the trends are parallel. It's the same trends. So, okay. And then here is the COVID shock. So everybody is stressed and anxious and fearful of the epidemic. So life satisfaction of everybody goes down. And then here, for these people who have a teleworkable job, you see a division into two groups. The green line is people who actually do telework at each point of time where we observe them. So from May to 2020 until the end of the period. And the blue line here is people who have a teleworkable job, but they are not teleworking at that point. And so what we see is that people who are actually working from home are more satisfied with their life than people who are not. And when we look at the GHQ, we see that there are some dynamics here. In the first, this is the last slide. The first, initially they are more stressed, they have concentration problem, etc. But after some months, all these indicators improve, and they become their mental health improves too. So this is a bit of a puzzle, because we saw that in terms of job satisfaction, we have many reasons to believe and many empirical observation that people were less satisfied with their job. I mean, well-being at work was down because of working from home, but life satisfaction is higher. So there is a little bit of a contradiction. This is, of course, a question for research, but maybe a tentative hypothesis is that people prefer working from home, even if it's less favorable for their job. So it means that the relative importance of work has been reduced during this epidemic. So you know that you enjoy working from home. Maybe you're not in the city anymore. Maybe you move to some other place, and life is really nicer. Although for your work is not really the best, but all in all, the trade-off is advantageous. So maybe it's just a tentative conjecture. Maybe what happens when people are forced to work from home and they enjoy it, the relative importance of work is diminishing. And thank you.
So thank you very much for this excellent presentation and really interesting work being done there. So before I open the questions to the floor, I'm going to jump in and I have a few questions to ask you. So the first one was when you mentioned about identity, and I was wondering if you're working on that question, and could you maybe relate that to what's been said about identity in France and that kind of loss of identity, and whether there have been policies that have been put in place either at government level or company level to try and you know, focus on the question of identity, the new identity of employees. The second question that I had was, what about hierarchy? Because I mean, when we're talking about company structures, you know, what role does a very hierarchical structure play in the sense of satisfaction and well-being, subjective well-being? From a personal level, I've moved from an institution which I thought was more horizontal to a more, you know, vertical institution, and I can see from managing, you know, colleagues in terms of, you know, we have management roles as professors, that there's a lot of perhaps well-being goes down in a very hierarchical subject, and a lot of other conditions that can be, you know, bullying, etc., can increase in those environments. I'm not saying that's what's the case here, but you know, that's sort of. And the second thing I would be interested in, the research that's been done in the UK, has there been a similar study conducted in France, and can you see any differences in terms of culture in that sense, or are we looking at the same kind of trends in France? I'm sorry, I've raised a lot of questions there.
Thank you. Yeah, those are great questions. So about identity, what firms have been doing in France, but I guess everywhere, but indeed we have surveys of the French companies and workers. So first of all, there are some IT devices that allow recreating this sense of belonging to a group, you know, having a frontier around us, like Teams. You know, you can work, you can share documents, can create these groups, you can interact informally, and this recreates a sense of belonging to a community, although it's numerical. Also, sometimes in certain even administrations and ministries, there have been some surveys and people asking people what they were needing and what they would like to have and what they appreciated during this lockdown, and they really enjoyed this informal, coffee, electronic coffee, like these meetings that people, colleagues would gather for a short time, not to talk about some operational decision or something, but just to, like they do at the coffee machine. So firms have recreated this kind of moments, to my surprise, but they did. And of course, yeah, I don't, yeah, but otherwise, I mean, if completely working from home, never going to the firm's premises, never having this kinesthetic relations with colleagues, I think would imply losing some degrees of corporate identity, I guess. For identity, something I did in some studies is, I think identity to a large part is about language. When you work with people and you have to interact a lot about some specific domains, very often you start using some very specific words, technical words, or the jargon. And so this is like a shortcut. It's very fast. We understand each other. We are in the same world of ideas. And we start speaking a very specific language that people or other people don't understand. A bit like, like twins, when twins develop a specific language that only them understand. It doesn't go as far as that, but there is this kind of jargon. And then, so to measure the intensity of identity in a firm, one thing that can be done, and I did this sometimes in some studies, is to test the degree of knowledge of the specific jargon that workers in the firm possess. So people who are really in the firm and completely master the firm identity, and they're really acculturated, they really speak this jargon, this firm language very well. They know everything about this technical term, what it refers to, etc. People who are less involved in the firm, maybe they're not aware of all these things. So this is a way to measure it. Okay, was about identity. The other thing was about hierarchy. Yeah, you're completely right. So hierarchy, this is I was referring to the length of the command chain. We can see empirically that people who are far away in the chain from the decision maker are less happy at work. And of course, this hierarchy is opposed to autonomy. So it reduces people's locus of control and autonomy. This is about hierarchy. There is another opponent of well-being at work deriving from autonomy is all this standardization of process. When you want to do something, you have to go through a website, you have to fill in this form, you have to wait for the authorization to do this and that. All this administrative, bureaucratic standardization of process that firms have put in place because they became multinationals and they had to uniformize and standardize their process. So we can understand why they did it. But then on the side of workers, it's really what some behavioral economists have called sludge. So usually we use the word nudge. Nudge is to help someone act in his own interest, and sludge is some bureaucratic impediments that slows people and in their process. So I think hierarchy and this very bureaucratic process are the two enemies of locus of control and well-being. And the last question, alas, I would say, this UK survey is really great. It's a panel. It's been there for a long time. It used to be some tens of thousands of people. Now it's hundreds of thousands of people every year surveyed because the UK government has really endorsed this objective of measuring subjective well-being, thanks to Richard Layard in part, who is a professor at the LSE and really committed to this happiness project. In France, we have one survey which is called the SRCV. It's yearly, and there was no special COVID module. So this study that we ran was just impossible to replicate for France. And even so, several countries have similar surveys. So Germany has a great survey. It's called GSOEP, German Socioeconomic Panel. It's also a panel in the same kind. It's great too, but they don't have, in my well, I'm not aware of a special, that they would repeat the survey every month like the UK HLS did. So I think it's really unique. The observatoire. Yeah. So before COVID, we published. So the Observatoire du Bien-être, so Wellbeing Observatory, that I'm a director of. We publish a report every year about well-being or happiness in France. So we use, of course, the French data, and there are some data. So this national survey, SRCV, ran by INSEE, and we also have the Observatoire with INSEE. We have a quarterly survey. Actually, it's the most frequent survey of French people that exists. So we made up this survey and we started in 2016. It's quarterly, and we ask 20 questions to a panel of a representative panel of French population about different dimensions of subjective well-being and optimism or pessimism. And so we can really follow the evolution of well-being or ill-being over time. You know, when you have this Gilets jaunes crisis, then the COVID, and then déconfinement, reconfinement, etc. So, but it's not a panel, so it's not the same individuals over time, and it's, you know, it's 2,000 people. It's not 100,000.
So do you want to take the questions from the?
I'll read and then we can go to your question if that's okay. So I'll just read them out here. So we have 2 questions. I'll say them at the, well, we have quite a few questions. I'm going to pick 2. We have in the chat. One is, could you talk about a little bit more about how telework causes a detachment between the worker and the company? And then another person is saying, one of the issues that preoccupies me as a lecturer who has recently worked sometimes at home and sometimes on campus due to COVID is also the inconsistency between the transition of home and work. This inconsistency can greatly impair mental well-being as well as quality of work.
The inconsistency, yeah, I guess it's about how do you call it? Les temps sociaux. It's about the rhythm of life. So when you work in the firm, you have a schedule. You're there. Go to the firm at, I don't know, 8 or 9, and then you have a lunch break maybe. You see your colleagues, and then you work again, and then you go home. So you have this life rhythm, and you get organized, and you organize everything around that rhythm. So the kids and social life and everything. And when you work from home, you organize yourself differently. And so switching from one to the other, I guess, implies reorganizing and shifting from one to the other, and probably it's a source of perturbation. I guess here there is some heterogeneity. Some people will suffer from this, and some people will like this. It depends on how much you like regularity and routine and there is an optimal trade-off, which is specific to each person, between comfort and excitement. So everybody's looking for comfort, you know, not being exposed to danger, but everybody is looking also for excitement because this is a source of pleasure. But there is a good balance. There has to be a balance between these 2 objectives. If you have too much comfort and no excitement, you're depressed. If you have too much excitement and no comfort, you're stressed and neurotic. So, but it's personal. I mean, this optimal balance, it depends on the individual's personality. So for some people, it's nice to change from working from home to working in firm, etc. For some people, it's going to be too. Yeah, it's difficult to figure out. If you were completely working from home from the start, you would be hired by a firm and you would work from home with no meetings and no, never being in presence of your colleagues. Would it still be the same type of job? Would it still be the firm? In a way, yes, and in a way, no. It would still be a firm and a wage contract, and you would be a wage earner if you are a wage earner. If the type of contract is wage, this salariat, this wage contract, is that essentially you sell your time for a given mission, but you don't know exactly what, and then the firm is going to tell you what to do. So this is a hierarchical relationship. It's organization, it's not market. Otherwise, if you're not a wage earner anymore, if you're just contracting, for selling some service, it's like if you're on a platform, you're selling, you're contracting to, you commit to do some work and to deliver some output, and then you get paid in return. It's not a firm anymore. You're not in the firm. But if you in the first case, if you are still in a wage contract, you are still employed by the firm. So there is this affiliation and it's a subordination link from the juridical point of view. But a lot of the feeling of belonging, a lot of the emotional investment in the firm, in colleagues, in relationship with the management, I think a lot of this is going to disappear, would disappear.
We have some questions from the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I assume that we are used to a specific milieu of working, that is the university. Most of us have been teaching from home the last semesters. My question is whether you have any analysis, observation of job satisfaction among academics that were teaching from home and among students who were receiving the lessons, the teaching from their home too, because that's important for decisions for the future of our own universities. Many are tend to become mostly telematic and so, but I think it depends on this human factor too. Thank you.
There's not a lot of surveys about that, but actually in the Paris School of Economics, we ran a survey. We ran, because in France, the Ministry of Health, one of the branches, Santé Publique France, has ran regularly a survey of the French population using this hospital anxiety depression questionnaire in the general population. So we have used the same questionnaire. We have passed this, ran this questionnaire among the everybody in the Paris School of Economics. So students who are master students or PhD students, and then faculty, so professors or pure researchers, and also administrative staff. What we see is that the prevalence of depression and anxiety is high for students. It's about 1/3, exactly like in the general population. So it has, we have no benchmark like before COVID, but we see that it's very high for students, not so much for, much less for faculty, and intermediate for the staff, administrative staff. So indeed, it's very high. I think it's for students, it's really a mess. I mean, what's happening in university is not only acquiring knowledge. This you can do, of course, on the internet. You don't even need to be in a program. Everything is available for free, or almost. But it's really about maybe inspiration. It's about meeting your cohort. It's about creating these links and this relationship that you will keep for your life. There's a lot of things that you are doing, growing, learning, which is not only about the technical, the specific content of the course. I think there is one positive dimension, is that during COVID, all the seminars and all the conferences and even all the classes became open to the entire world. And so all the students were able to follow the classes, not only of their own professors in their own university, but of that professor in Harvard or MIT or any place. And this was really great. But I think it's great as a bonus. I don't think it can be a total substitute for in-presence teaching, especially for students. For us, of course, I prefer to teach in the presence. I must say that for the first year class, where I have 200 or 300 students, Zoom is great because I can mute them, so I can you don't have all the noise from the amphitheater from these first year students who are really not really used to. But it's not, and you can see their face on Zoom, but of course it's better to see them. But an important aspect when you're a professor or researcher is that you're going to meet your future PhD students or master students. You're going to supervise their work, and then some of them will become your colleagues. So this is really the best part of our job. I mean, what I really like now in my job is the young brains, which are great, and they learn so fast, and they're impressive, and they have such an energy for working, and they have all different ideas. And so if this, if you take this out from the job, you can do something else. You lose everything. So this intergenerational relationship and this renewal of the researchers, this is key, and it cannot happen but in presence, being there.
So you don't advise going to telematic?
No, totally no. I mean, part of it can be telematic. Part of it can be recorded and offered to people who don't have access. I mean, why not use the technical possibilities? But completely substituting telematic teaching, no, I don't think so. I don't see how you become a researcher if you never meet with people who can transmit not only knowledge but know-how, and no, I don't think it's gonna work.
Are there any more questions? Yeah, there's a question in the center there. Yeah.
So, I was looking at one of the scientific ability approach, looking at the interaction with property and disability. And so I'm thinking of the components that people work quite nicely at in your presentation. So have you considered the interface of the ability approach with these indicators like factual satisfaction and so forth?
So yeah, of course, the capability is the actual possibility that people have to access positions, to use their competence, is the real life equality of opportunity or not. So of course this is important. So concerning telework, this is maybe telework. Because everybody is put on the same playing field, like there is no physical interaction anymore. You're not, maybe the fact of being a woman or a man, or being tall or small, or your appearance, maybe this is downplayed by the fact of being on Zoom. So maybe it's a factor of equalization in that sense. But I think if we have to require resort to this to equalize, it's bad news. I mean, maybe we could find some other ways to civilize people rather than having to digitalize them.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're going to have to wrap things up now. But just again, thank you very much. There's been a lot of conversation going on online as well. They really enjoyed your presentation and the question and answers. So thank you very much again. It's actually it's in the middle of the night in the US at the moment. But what will happen was this will actually be recorded so that they can listen to this recording later on, and there'll probably be another chat session between those that are watching it later on today when it's a reasonable time in the US. But anyway, thank you very much, and yeah, thank you.